Joanna. It is said that the scholar Kong Zuli is a descendant of the sage Kong. He is a generous and cultivated man and is good at writing poems. A close friend of his was a county magistrate in Tiantai, Zhejiang province, and he wrote to invite him to go. Kong Shang was invited to go, but the county magistrate just passed away. He was homeless, impoverished, and unable to return home, so he had to live in Botuo Temple and was hired by the monks to copy scriptures. 100 steps away to the west of Bodhisattva Temple is Mr. Shan's house. Mr. Shan is a son of a noble family. Because of a big lawsuit, his family fell into decline and the population was reduced, so he moved to the countryside to live, and this house became vacant. One day, it was snowing heavily and the road was quiet with no pedestrians. Kong Sheng happened to pass by the door of Shan's house and saw a young man coming out of it. He had a beautiful appearance and elegant manners. When the young man saw Kong Sheng, he came over to salute him. After a brief greeting, he invited him into his home to talk. Kong Sheng liked him very much and followed him in happily. Although the house is not very spacious, there are brocade curtains hanging everywhere and many ancient calligraphy and paintings hanging on the walls. There is a book on the desk, the cover of which is titled The Chronicles of Lang Huan. He flipped through it, and the content was something he had never seen before. When Kong Sheng saw the young man living in this house, he thought he was the owner of the Shan family, so he stopped asking about his surname and family. The young man inquired about Kong Sheng's experience in detail, sympathized with him and advised him to set up a library to teach. Kong Sheng sighed and said, "I am a homeless person. Who can recommend me?" The young man said, "If you don't dislike me for being clumsy, I am willing to become your teacher." Kong Sheng was so happy that he did not dare to be the boy's teacher and asked him to treat him as a friend. Then he asked the young man, "Why is the door of your house always closed?" The young man replied, "This is the Shan family's house. In the past, Mr. Shan returned to his hometown to live, so it was idle for a long time. My surname is Huangfu, and my ancestors lived in Shaanxi. Because my house was burned down by wildfire, so I am temporarily settling down here." Only then did Kong Sheng realize that the young man was not the master of the Shan family. That night, the two chatted and laughed happily, and the young man left Kong Sheng to sleep in the same bed with him. Early the next morning, a little book boy came into the house and lit a charcoal fire. The young man got up first and entered the inner house. Kong Sheng was still sitting on the bed with the quilt around him. The book boy came in and said, "The grandpa is here." Kong Sheng was shocked and hurriedly got up. An old man with white hair came in and thanked Kong Sheng sincerely and said, "Sir, you don't dislike my stupid boy and are willing to teach him to read. He has just learned to read and learn calligraphy. Please don't treat him as a peer because of his relationship with friends." After finishing speaking, he presented a set of brocade clothes, a mink hat, a pair of shoes and socks. The old man saw that Kong Sheng had finished dressing up, so he ordered the wine and food to be served. "The tables and chairs in the room and the clothes worn by the people are so dazzling that I don't know what they are made of." After drinking for a few rounds, the old man got up to say goodbye, picked up his crutch and left. After dinner, Mr. Huangfu gave me the lessons he had learned, which were all ancient Chinese poems and did not contain the 8-lect essay of the time. Kong Sheng asked him why. The young master smiled and replied, "I am not seeking fame." In the evening, the young master put food and wine on the table and said, "Drink as much as you want tonight, but you won't be allowed to do this tomorrow." Then he called to the book boy and said, "See if grandpa is asleep. If he is, you can quietly call Xiangnu." Not long after the boy left, he brought back the peepo in an embroidered bag. After a while, a maid came in, wearing a red dress and looking extremely gorgeous. The young master asked her to play the song Hunan Concubine. Xiangnu used an ivory plectrum to play the strings. The melody was exciting and sad, and the rhythm was unlike anything she had heard before. Then he asked her to pour wine from a large cup, and the two of them drank until the middle of the night. The next day, the two got up early to study together. The young master is very smart and can remember everything he has seen. 2 or 3 months later, I wrote it and it was amazing. They agreed to drink once every 5 days, and every time they drank, they would ask Xiangnu to accompany them. One night, when he was half drunk, Kong Sheng's eyes were fixed on Xiang Nu. The young master already understood his intention and said, "This maid was raised by my old father. You are far away from home and have no wife. I have been planning for you day and night for a long time, hoping to find you a beautiful wife." Kong Sheng said, "If you really want to help me, you must find someone like Xiang Nu." The young master smiled and said, "You have truly become a rare and strange person. If you think Xiang Nu is beautiful, then your wish will be fulfilled too easily." More than half a year later, Kong Sheng wanted to play in the countryside. When he arrived at the gate, he saw that the outside of the two door panels were locked. He asked the young master why. The young master said, "My father was afraid that he would make some friends and disturb his mood, so he closed the door to thank guests." Kong Sheng felt relieved after hearing this. It was the hot and humid season in midsummer, so they moved the study to the garden pavilion. A peach-like boil suddenly swelled up on Kong Sheng's chest. Over the night, it grew to the size of a bull. He was in unbearable pain and moaned incessantly. The young master visited him day and night, not even bothering to eat or sleep. A few days later, Kong Sheng's pain became more severe and he gradually could no longer eat or drink. The grandfather also came to visit, and the father and son sighed at each other. The young master said, "I thought about it the night before yesterday. Only Sister Jiao Na can treat my husband's condition. I have sent someone to my grandmother's house to call her. Why hasn't she arrived for so long?" Just after he finished speaking, the book boy came in and said, "Nog arrived, and so did my aunt and Songu." The father and son hurriedly entered the inner house. In an instant, the young master led his sister Jiao Na to see Kong Sheng. Jiao Na was about 13 or 14 years old, beautiful, intelligent, and graceful. As soon as Kong Sheng saw her beauty, he immediately forgot to moan and felt refreshed. The young master then said to his sister, "This is my good friend. We are no less than brothers. My sister must treat him well." Jiao Na then put away her shameful face, hung her long sleeves, and leaned on the bed to diagnose Kong Sheng's condition. While holding hands, Kong Sheng could smell the fragrance exuding from Jiao Na's body better than that of orchids. Jiao Na smiled and said, "You should have this kind of disease. Your heart will beat. Although the condition is critical, it can be cured. It's just that the skin sores have condensed, so you have to cut the skin and flesh." After saying that, he took off the gold bracelet on his arm and placed it on Kong Sheng's affected area, then slowly pressed it down. The boil protrudes by more than an inch and is higher than the gold bracelet. The red and swollen parts of the boil root are all contained within the bracelet, and are not as big as a bull before. Jiao Na used her other hand to lift up the skirt of her clothes, and took off her sword. The blade was thinner than paper. She pressed the bracelet with one hand and held the knife with the other, and gently cut along the root of the sore. Purple blood flowed out along the knife, and stained the bed mat. Kong Sheng was greedy for Jiao Na's beauty. Not only did he not feel pain, but he was also afraid that the cut would be finished early and he would not be able to cuddle up with her for a while longer. After a while, all the rotten flesh on the sore was cut off, and it became round and round like a tumor cut off a tree. Joanna called for water and washed the open wound. Then he spit out a red pill, as big as a bullet, from his mouth, put it on the flesh where the boil had been removed, and pressed it with his hand to rotate it. After just one turn, Kong Sheng felt hot and steaming. After another turn, he felt itchy. After 3 turns, his whole body was cool, penetrating into his bone marrow. Jiao Na put away the red pill and put it back in her mouth, saying, "It's cured." After that, she walked away quickly. Kong Sheng jumped up and ran out of the door to thank him. He felt that the pain he had suffered for a long time was gone all at once. But in my heart, I was thinking about Jiao Na's beauty, and I could no longer control myself. From then on, Confucius sat with his book closed and was bored. The young master had already seen what was on his mind and said, "I have been looking for you for a long time and finally I have chosen a good girl." Kong Sheng asked, "Who is it?" The young master replied, "He is also a relative of mine." Kong Sheng thought hard for a long time and just said, "It's not necessary." Then, facing the wall, he recited Yuanshan's poem. Once upon a time, the sea was difficult to deal with except for Wushan. It was not a cloud. The young master understood what he meant. He said, "My father admires your great talent and often wants to marry you. But I only have one little sister, Jiao Na, and she is too young. I also have an aunt and cousin Song, who is 18 years old and has a good appearance. If you don't believe it, cousin Song comes to the garden pavilion every day, and you can wait in the front room to see her." Kong Sheng went there as the young master said, and sure enough he saw Jiao Na coming with a beauty. This woman's eyebrows are as curved as the tentacles of a silk moth, and her slender feet are wearing crusted embroidered shoes. She is indistinguishable from Jiao Na. Confucius was very happy and asked the young master to be a matchmaker. The next day, the young master came out of the inner house and congratulated Kong Sheng, saying, "The matter is done." So he cleaned another yard and held a wedding ceremony for Kong Sheng. That night, drums and music were playing, and it was extremely lively. Kong Sheng felt as if a fairy in the moon suddenly came to lie down with him. And he even suspected that the Guangan Palace was right in front of him. It may not be above the sky anymore. After getting married, Kong Sheng felt very satisfied. One night, the young master said to Kong Sheng, "I will never forget your advice to me to increase my knowledge. It's just that Mr. Shen recently came back from the lawsuit and asked for the house in a hurry. My family wants to leave here and go west. It seems that it is difficult to do so anymore. We were together, so the emotions of separation made me feel very uncomfortable." Kong Sheng was willing to follow his family to the west. The young master advised him to return to his hometown in Shandong. Kong Sheng felt very embarrassed. The young master said, "Don't worry, I can send you away immediately." Not long after, Taegong led Song Niang to come and presented 100 taels of gold to Kong Sheng. The young master stretched out his hands to hold the hands of Kong Sheng and his wife tightly, and told them to close their eyes and stop looking. They were floating in the sky, feeling the wind whistling in their ears. After a long time, the young master said, "We have arrived." Kong Sheng opened his eyes and saw that he had returned to his hometown. Only then did I realize that the young master was not a human being. He happily opened the door. The mother unexpectedly saw her beautiful daughter-in-law again, and the whole family was very happy. When I looked back, I saw that the young master had already disappeared. Song Niang served her mother-in-law very filially, and her reputation for beauty and virtuousness spread far and wide. Later, Confucius passed the Jinshi examination and was awarded the position of manager of Yan'an Prefecture. He took up the post with his family. His mother didn't go with him because of the long distance. Song Niang gave birth to a boy named Shaowan. Kong Sheng was later dismissed from office for offending the censor Xingtai and was prevented from returning to his hometown. One time he accidentally went hunting in the countryside and met a beautiful young man riding a black horse. He kept looking back at him. Kong Sheng took a closer look and found out that it was Mr. Huang Fu. Quickly reining in the horse, the two recognized each other with a mixture of joy and sorrow. The young master invited Kong Sheng to go home with him. They came to a village with dense trees and thick shade. When I entered the young master's house, I saw that the door was decorated with golden bubble nails, as if it were a family member. Kong Sheng asked Jiao Na how she was doing, and found out that she was married. He also found out that his mother-in-law had passed away, and he was very sad. He stayed overnight and returned with his wife. At this time, Jiao Na happened to come. She hugged Kong Sheng's son and played with him, saying, "Sister has messed up my family's crops." Kong Sheng thanked her for her previous kindness, and Jiao Na smiled and said, "Brother-in-law has become a noble man, and the sore has healed. You haven't forgotten the pain, have you?" Her husband Wu Lang also came to pay her respects, stayed here for 2 nights before leaving. One day, Prince Huang Fu suddenly looked sad and said to Kong Sheng, "A disaster is coming from heaven. Can you save me?" Although Kong Sheng didn't know what was going to happen, he immediately expressed his willingness to take the responsibility. The young master hurriedly went out and called the whole family to come and line up in the hall to worship Kong Sheng. Kong Sheng was greatly surprised and asked why. The young master said, "We are not human beings, but foxes. If there is a thunder disaster today, if you are willing to resist it with your own body, we can all survive. Otherwise, please hold the child and go away, so as not to involve you." Kong Sheng vowed to live and die with the young master and his family. So the young master asked Kong Sheng to stand at the door with a sharp sword in his hand, and told him, "Don't move even if the thunderbolt strikes." Kong Sheng did as the young master said. Sure enough, the clouds were thick. The day was like night. The sky was dark and the earth was dark. Looking back at the place where I lived, I saw that there were no large houses, only a tall tomb and a large, bottomless cave. While they were still in shock, there was a loud thunderclap that shook the mountains. Violent storms rose, uprooting old trees. Although Kong Sheng felt deaf and dazzled, he still stood there motionless. In the thick smoke and black fog, I suddenly saw a ghost-like monster with a sharp beak and long claws. It grabbed a person from the deep hole and rose with the smoke. Kong Sheng glanced at the man's clothes and shoes and felt that they looked like Jiao Na. He jumped up in a hurry, stabbed the monster with his sharp sword, and fell into pieces. Suddenly another thunder exploded, and Kong Sheng was knocked to the ground and passed out. After a while, the sky cleared and the clouds cleared, and Jiao Na slowly woke up. When she saw Kong Sheng dying next to her, she cried loudly and said, "Mr. Kong died for me. Why am I still alive?" Song Niang also came out of the cave and carried Kong Sheng back together. Jiao Na asked Song Niang to hold Kong Sheng's head, and asked the young master to use a gold hairpin to open Kong Sheng's teeth. She held Kong Sheng's cheeks with her hands, put the red pills in her mouth, into his mouth with her tongue, and then blow into it mouth to mouth. The red pill entered Kong Sheng's throat and made a rattling sound. After a while, Kong Sheng woke up. Seeing all my relatives in front of me was like waking up from a dream. So the family was reunited, no longer panicked, and extremely happy. Kong Sheng thought that the tombs could not be lived in for a long time, so he suggested that everyone go back to their hometown with him. Everyone in the room praised her, except Jiao Na, who was unhappy. Kong Sheng asked her to go with Wu Lang, but Jiao Na was afraid that her parents-in-law would not leave their youngest son, so they did not discuss the result all day long. Suddenly I saw a young servant from the Wu family arriving, panting and sweating. Everyone asked him again and again in panic, only to find out that Wu Lang's family also suffered a disaster on the same day, and the whole family died. When Jiao Na heard about it, she stamped her feet in sorrow and cried non-stop. Everyone comforted her together. It was only then that everyone's plan to return to their hometown with Kong Sheng was finalized. Kong Sheng went to the city to prepare food for a few days. When he came back, he rushed to pack his luggage overnight. After Kong Sheng returned to his hometown, he gave his abandoned garden to Prince Huangfu and his family. The gate of the garden was usually locked. It was only opened when Kong Sheng and Song Niang arrived. Kong Sheng, the young master, and Jiao Na's brother and sister were together, playing chess, drinking, chatting, and partying. And they were as close as a family. Kong Sheng's son Xiaowan grew up. He had a beautiful appearance and the look of a fox. He went to the city to play, and people knew that he was the son of a fox.
Alright, this story has come to an end. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. Thank you.